Oh, well, hello, everybody. So we're just over on the other channel there, on Political X's Sunday Roast channel. But we're here now, and that's the main thing. Thank you to everyone for hanging on there. 21 minutes past when I thought I was going to start. I was here, sitting here at the desk, ready to go. But I wanted to get that one last joke in before we got people to come over here. So welcome. You're watching Morning Brew on Politics Social. I am Graham Hughes, last I checked, and you watching this, you're awesome. So particularly the people in the chat, like Paula Thomas and Colin Baker, Person Impersonator, Kirsty McTeer, Harry Flashman, Andrew Ray, Martin Harrow, Russell Cannon, Pete Dencat, and also Liam Fairhurst, Superfly Vibrations. Hello, one and all. How are you all doing this morning? If you'd like to join our fabulous people in the fabulous chat, all you need to do is hit the fabulous subscribe button and wait for a fabulous minute. And then, as long as you're not a troll, you can opine about whatever you want. So just turn that up a little bit. So we've got a lot of sunlight coming. You can't see. Look, it's just like God is sitting over there. God the Badger. Making lots of light. Anyway, so thanks for joining us today. We are going to be talking a little bit about Trump, but don't worry, you won't have to look at him. We're going to be talking about the fact that he has probably bit off more than he can chew once again. He got a bit big for his boots last week because he thought, I brought peace to the Middle East. And therefore he decided to, threaten China with 100% tariff. And it's not just 100% tariff, my friends. It is 100% on top of the 30% that he's already put on them. So it'll be 130% tariff on pretty much everything coming over from China. And this tariff is paid for by Americans. As we keep saying, this is a tax on imports paid by Americans. And it is reckless. It is against WTO rules. It's quite possibly illegal under American law. We're waiting to find out about that. The court cases are going through at the moment. But, Donald Trump always in full campaign mode mania, which is something that the left need to get through their heads, which is something that Zach Polanski, I feel, and we talked about this in Sunday Roast. And we also talked about it on the Friday Night Social as well. Zach Polanski, he is, or the agenda, I guess. We didn't talk about that much on the Friday Night Social. We talked about other shit. But ABC, okay? Like, the guy in Glenn Ross, Alec Baldwin, who's a bit of a mongan, but let's not dwell on that. ABC, always be campaigning. ABC. I want to go in and stand up in front of all the bloody Labour MPs and just go, fuck you, that's my name. ABC, always be campaigning. It's how Trump wins. It's how Nigel Farage has become a bloody MP. Because he's always campaigning even when there's not an election on. Can you imagine how dispiriting it is to go all the way down to London and meet up with the people who do the digital stuff for Labour? And you're like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Here's all these ideas, not just from me, but from Phil Morehouse and from Super Tansky and from Abe Thompson and from all our friends who create content on the internet. Here's some ideas. Here's some things you can do. And they say, sorry, we only do that kind of thing when there's an election on. So for 6 weeks of every 5 years, we will campaign. The rest of the time, we'll just leave it to the right-wing fascist knobheads to campaign. They can campaign all the time. We like to keep our powder dry, not let people know too much about what we're up to. Because could you imagine? Yeah. And that was something that the previous leader of Labour did quite well, actually. He was always campaigning. Went out and spoke in Glastonbury just after an election. There might not have been another election for another 5 years. He didn't know. But he still went out. Still went out to Glastonbury and went, hello. I know that a lot of his supporters were bussed in because I was there. But that's not the point. The point is that he was campaigning. And that's what you need to do if you are a politician. Anyway, so Trump's in full campaign mode at the moment, even though he can't be re-elected. He's not leaving the White House unless it's in a box. Just saying. But yes, he has threatened to impose 100% tariffs, saying, that he wants on all Chinese imports, everything from iPhones to car parts to children's toys. And China's response has been calm, measured, but very clear. We don't want a trade war, but we're not afraid of one. And US and China only recently achieved a fragile trade truce after Trump spat his dummy out the pram in April, said, we could put these trade things on everyone, these trade tariffs on everyone, causing the economy, the stock markets to crash in America. And then he told his friends, hey, good time to buy now, buy the dip. And then he announced that he was cutting back on these tariffs. And suddenly the money went up, the number went up, the curve went up. And his mates made a fuckload of money. Now, if a left-wing politician did that, you'd be told that it was corruption. Corruption! But yeah. The US and China, like I say, they've been doing tit-for-tat tariffs. Tit-for-tat tariffs, that's a good expression, isn't it? For the last few years, actually, since Trump's first presidency. God, I can't believe we're in his second. Not even a year in. Rare earth restrictions from Beijing last week reignited tensions, and now both sides are back in the game of economic chicken. And the Chinese Ministry of Commerce says if the US persists in acting unilaterally, China will resolutely take corresponding measures. That's all about rare earth. So rare earth materials are 17 or so metallic elements that are vital to modern life. They're in smartphones, in electric cars, in wind turbines, MRI scanners, military tech, everything. They're not actually rare. They're just difficult and toxic to extract, which is why China dominates the supply chain, because they've been building up relationships with countries in Africa and elsewhere for decades now, whereas the Americans and the Europeans have been a bit reticent to sort of go there because of whatever. The Chinese have said, the Chinese authorities have said, yeah, we'll invest, we'll build a big mine for you, and we'll build a road from the mine to the port. We won't build a road to help the people who actually live in your country, but we'll build a road from the mine to the port. Okay, that's cool. China mines 61%, just over 60% of the world's rare earths, and but the big thing, even more so, is that 92% of the processing of these rare earth materials is done in China. And the US has one active mine, as far as I'm aware, in California, but it still relies on China for the processing of these ores. Why this matters, every iPhone, every Tesla, every F-35 fighter jet needs these materials to cut the supply, and production grinds to a halt. And but here's the thing. The US will not allow China to make semiconductors. So we need to talk about this as well. So there's only one place really on Earth that makes the kind of elite semiconductors that we need to drive the AI revolution, right? And that is Taiwan. Now, obviously, anyone who has read up on a bit of history knows that Taiwan and China have a little bit of a tango going on. They have a tangled history, which is this. Put in a nutshell, and I'm sorry if I'm losing a bit of the nuance here. The Kuomintang government of the 1940s in China was defeated by the Communist Party under Chairman Mao, who did the Long March and then took over in Beijing. And the Kuomintang government legged it to Taiwan. They took all the gold they could stuff into their pants, and they legged it over to the island of Taiwan off the coast of China. And they declared themselves the Republic of China. And they said, we are China. And they, the government, in exile almost, kind of, internally displaced government in Taiwan, declared itself that it declared to the world that it was China. And for many years, until about the early 1970s, they were the people who represented China in the United Nations. And it's not until President Nixon, his big thawing of relations with mainland China in the early 70s, that switched. And China in Beijing, instead of China in Taipei, got to control the seat in the United Nations. And from then on, Taiwan has been a bone of contention because Taiwan has a claim on the rest of China and China has a claim on Taiwan. Having the foundation of modern technology, the global semiconductor industry becoming the front line in the geopolitical struggle between the US and China, when the US have defended Taiwan, which is one of the few places that can make this real high-end stuff. It's a tricky diplomatic and economic situation, not helped by Trump turning up in his fucking size 10s, in his daddy shoes, screaming and shouting like a toddler, because, that's what he does. Just a shout out to the Chaos Druid there, who's been a member for 2 months. Morning, hope you are well. I'm well. I hope everyone else in the chat is well as well. But thank you for asking. You're welcome. You are awesome. Thank you. Now here's something, right? So to make these high-end semiconductors, right? There is a company in Amsterdam. No, it's in Veldhoven in the Netherlands, right? And it's called ASML, and they build the only machines on Earth capable of producing the most advanced chips using extreme EUV, extreme ultraviolet light, a wavelength shorter than visible light, used to etch circuits smaller than viruses. Each EUV machine costs around $380 million, requires 40 shipping containers, 3 planes, and 20 trucks to transport, and it's so precise that it must be assembled in dust-free rooms. The Dutch government, under US pressure, has banned ASML from selling these extreme UV machines to China, effectively freezing China out of cutting-edge chip production. Furthermore, America has made it difficult for China to buy these high-end microchips that are being made in Taiwan and also in other places, right? And these chips are made from layered silicon wafers with patterned with billions of transistors. Imagine a skyscraper with thousands of microscopic flaws. The finer the patterns, the more powerful the chip, as defined in Moore's law. Moore's law, every couple of years, the size of transistors halves, and all the chips, the size halves, and the power, the computation of them doubles. I don't think it's quite as linear as it was in the first half of my life, but it's still, it's there. These chips are getting smaller and smaller, and yet the power that they make, the number of computations they can make is doubling, right? Every 2 years. So, ASML's machines are laser-generated plasma light from vaporized tin droplets that etch these patterns atom by atom. It is an insanely complex process. And while ASML makes these machines, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company actually fabricates 90% of the world's most advanced chips, including those for Apple and Nvidia. That's TSMC. This makes Taiwan a linchpin of the global economy and a strategic flashpoint, as China's ambition to reclaim Taiwan directly threatens Western chip supplies. And therefore, the US's defense of Taiwan isn't just a political one, it's also an economic one. If China did invade and then took over the factory, or factories that make these semiconductors, that's the rest of the world snookered for making semiconductors, right? And barred from this EUV technology, what China uses is something called DUV, which stands for Deep Ultraviolet Systems, which produces less powerful chips. Yeah, it shocked markets earlier this year with DeepSeek, a Chinese rival to ChatGPT, trained on cheaper, older chips, proof that China can innovate without these same sort of constraints. Trump's specially made hobnailed clown shoes, says Paula Thomas, with the first super chat of the morning. Thank you so much, Paula. That is very kind of you. I hope it's not the only super chat of the morning. It's going to be the afternoon soon, you know. Quantum computing will be the next technological leap, says Chrissy. I don't know, mate, because I wrote a short story, God, 20 years ago. Yeah, it would have been 20 years ago, 2005, called Qubit. And it was about these identical twins that managed to crack the first quantum computer. And one of them wanted to use it to take money out of all these big corporations and put them into the bank accounts of charities and impoverished areas around the world. And the other twin didn't want to do that. But obviously, once they had got their computer going, it's just a discussion, really. It wasn't very flashy. But yeah, they had achieved the quantum computer that could do infinitely more calculations per second than any computer that we have at the moment. You could take all the computational power of the planet, put it together, and it would be a tiny fraction of the computational power of a quantum computer if we could actually do that. But yeah, but that would make today's chips absolutely obsolete by using these qubits that are between 0 and 1. Simultaneously allowing for vast parallel processing. Microsoft recently announced progress towards a quantum chip. Well, China is spending 4 times more public money on quantum research than the US, and unlike standard chips, quantum processors are actually using electron beam machines, which China already possesses. So if we do move towards quantum computing, that China will already have an advantage there. But beyond machines and beyond materials, talent is actually the true advantage here, because you need the innovations to be able to stay at the cutting edge. And this is something that China has a lot of. There's a lot of STEM graduates, and many trained in Western universities. Meanwhile, Trump is running around like a fucking lunatic trying to get rid of anyone who's smarter than him. Not just out of his cabinet, not just out of his party, but also out of the country. So, yeah, good luck with that, America. But, but like I said about, China being barred from this EUV technology, the US see this as, they see China as a strategic threat. AI and advanced chips underpin everything, from consumer tech to military AI systems in China and in the UK and in the US and all over the world. Although I do think that the dot-com, I was going to say the dot-com bubble, is how old I am. I'm so old, I remember dot-com bubbles. I think that the AI bubble is going to burst very, very soon. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to lose a lot of money. But it won't be the rich. I mean, the rich always get away with this kind of thing, don't they? So, because they just borrow the money. They gamble with borrowed money. They gamble with other people's money. That's what the rich do. It's never their own. So some people question about whether these export bans are truly about national security or whether they're just simply protectionism. Your mileage may vary on that. And and meanwhile, China's a company. There's a company in China called SME or SMEE, and they've patented a homegrown extreme UV lithography machine, hinting that it might soon close the gap that it currently has between the US and themselves, and the rest of the world, being that these extreme UV machines can't be sold to China from the only place that makes them, which is the Netherlands, who are being lent on by America not to sell them to China. You're keeping up at the back there. Sorry, this is turning into a bit of a fucking lecture, isn't it? Sorry, I'll throw some knob jokes in if you like to make it a little bit more digestible. Semiconductors rely on rare earth materials and critical minerals such as gallium and germanium, which China largely controls. So China produces 98% of global gallium and over 2/3 of germanium, and processes 90% of rare earths worldwide, as I've said earlier. And this dominance gives Beijing immense leverage and explains why Trump has been pressuring allies like Ukraine and India to secure alternative sources and processing deals. So that's just a little segue about the situation. So imagine like China controls the rare earth materials, America kind of controls the technology to allow them to allow China to use those rare earth materials to make these cutting edge microchips, which they need, semiconductors, which they need, we need, everyone needs. So it's a bit of a Mexican standoff here, isn't it? Because you got one group saying, hey, we've got the raw materials you need, and the other one saying, well, we've got the technology that you need. And if they don't work together, then the global economy will grind to a halt. Hey, wouldn't that be great for working people? Hint of sarcasm there. It would not be great by any stretch of the imagination. So Trump is under, whenever he's under sort of pressure domestically, court cases, poor economic data, international humiliation, I don't know, the Epstein list, he lashes out at China. So in April this year, he announced reciprocal tariffs on Chinese goods, which the reciprocity of these tariffs was just mad. Like the way that they calculated them was just fucking insane. And it bear no relation to reality. So you to have a country like, I don't know, Tuvalu in the Pacific Ocean, only 10,000 people live there, and because they only buy X amount of American goods, they need to buy more. They need to buy more. And it's like, well, there's 330 million Americans, right? There's only 10,000 Tuluvans. So how does that work? How explain to me how that works? How are the people of Tuvalu supposed to buy the same amount of, Tuvalu is probably a bad example because I don't think the Americans buy much from Tuvalu, but any kind of small state around the world that's only got like 4.7 million people living there, say like, I don't know, New Zealand, they'll go, oh, but the New Zealand people aren't buying as much off us as we're buying off them. And you're like, yeah, because there's not as many of them. People could only eat a few meals a day, mate. Dickheads. You can only watch one TV show at a time. But yeah, in June, Trump accused China of breaking the truce, and in October, he's threatened 100% tariffs after Beijing has put restrictions on rare earths coming out of the country. He's accused China of a moral disgrace in dealing with other nations, which is the irony of Donald Trump saying that, a guy who threatened to invade Panama, Canada, and Greenland. Greenland being part of Denmark, and Canada as well, both being members of NATO, that alliance that we're supposed to have together. And there's a lot of economic illiteracy here, which isn't surprising because Trump is thick as pig shit. He's very good at campaigning, but he's genuinely, he can't get his head around anything more complex than, I don't know, thing made of gold be shiny. That's about as far as his cognitive abilities go. But these tariffs are a tax on American consumers. As I've said, the imports rise in price, inflation spikes, jobs get lost as manufacturers can't afford parts. So even companies that build in America, they might have a few parts coming from other parts of the world, and they're having to pay more for these parts, and therefore these commodities that are being made in America are costing more. And then farmers and exporters get hit with Chinese retaliation, Farmageddon, which is what we're seeing now, caused by by China saying, well, we're not going to buy any of your soybeans then. And America's going, but we grew all these soybeans. Do you not want them? And China's like, no, don't want those soybeans that you grew. We're going to get them from Brazil and Argentina instead. And America's like, oh, well, that sucks. But in 2018, US soybean farmers were decimated. They bankrupted a lot of them. And it was only because there's a massive government bailout, which will probably be again to the tune of $10 billion or so dollars for the soybean farmers, that they'll actually not possibly lose the farm, or maybe they will lose the farm and it'll be bought up by some big megacorp like Monsanto or something. Steel tariffs in 2018 caused higher prices for US car makers, and Trump had to pay out billions in subsidies to his own voters to stop them rebelling, and he's doing that again. And I say Trump had to pay out. It's not his money, it's the taxpayers' money in America, which could go on, I don't know, healthcare, education, infrastructure to sort out all the crumbling, thousands of crumbling bridges and tunnels and viaducts in America. But we're not going to spend money on that. We're going to spend money on subsidizing farmers to grow stuff for that stuff to just wither on the vine. Now, China has responded in its calculated way, calculated, not reckless, calm, deliberate, measured A reminder that China plays the long game. Trump is famously impatient, stamping his foot. Trump will stilt skin. Hopefully one day he'll get his foot stuck in the ground and he won't be able to get out. Ooh, we got a super chat in from Paula Thomas. Thank you very much, Paula, for the 20 quid. It's very generous of you. Made it worth getting up this morning. TOE students in USSR invented base 3 computer. The advantage was you could express the 3 values, a -1, 0, 1, thus curing the main problem with binary, the completely stupid way negative numbers are expressed. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. But that makes sense, doesn't it, having a -1? Yeah. You know, we've got another millennium bug coming, haven't we? Do you know about this? The millennium... So one of the ways they cured the millennium bug, which would have happened and would have fucked a lot of things up, had a lot of computer engineers all over the world sorted it out. But yeah, it's how many milliseconds, is it? Is it how many milliseconds has passed since the 1st of January 1970? And that's how all the clocks on all the computers are set now. And the number of blocks that they can have for the numbers is going to max out in 2038. So we're going to have to reset the clocks somehow? I don't know. If someone wants to explain this, Paula might be able to explain this to me better. But I believe there's a second millennium bug on the horizon, which needs to be sorted out because by then it'll hit, I don't know, whatever it is, 17 quadrillion numbers, and there just won't be enough slots in the computer for computers around the world to be able to know what day it is. You need that. AI doesn't know what day it is. It's hilarious. Like I'll type into AI, I need some notes to refer to about this, and I'll be talking about Labour, and it still thinks that the Tories are in power, and I have to write the Tories are no longer in power, Labour in government. And I thought, oh, okay, thank you, and then it forgets the next day. God, it's a little helpful robot that gets everything wrong. But yeah, going back to China and its countermeasures. They've called the tariffs a unilateral act of hostility. They promised resolute countermeasures and urged Washington to correct its wrong approach. That their words, not mine. The likely countermeasures are tightening of rare earth exports even further, targeting specific US sectors, automotive, tech, agriculture, and delaying or cancelling Xi-Trump meeting next week at APAC in South Korea, which is supposed to happen, and it has actually been cancelled. I think Trump actually cancelled it. But the US can't build its own electric cars, solar panels, or fighter jets without the rare earths. But if Beijing cuts off supplies entirely, it will cripple industries within weeks. And so Beijing has a bit more leverage than America has over Beijing, because America has already busted it's already shown its cards, because it said that that China aren't allowed to make these highly advanced EUV created semiconductors. So what else can America do, really, apart from put tariffs on, which doesn't really affect China that much, and China can always pivot. China is playing the long game, as always. The US banning these chips in China, it hasn't affected China as much as China stopping all rare earths coming into America. And but in a way, this is just mutually assured destruction, mutually assured depression. That's what it is. MAD, mutually assured depression, that we will go into if they continue on like this. It's giants fighting in the playground and not caring on which little squishy humans under their feet they step on. China has added 5 more elements to its control list. These are holmium, erbium, thulium, europium, and ytterbium. And exporters now need special licenses, giving effectively a chokehold on global tech production. These elements are used in magnets, semiconductors, EV batteries, satellites, lasers, all that kind of stuff. So mining rare earth materials is, it is incredibly destructive. You end up with acid lakes, toxic runoff, radioactive waste, and Western countries outsourced the pollution to China decades ago, and now they're playing the the geopolitical price for that hypocrisy. Oh, me clean and green, and we'll let this dangerous stuff be done by some other country, and now they're like, oh shit, hang on. And in 2010, I think a lot of people forget this, China briefly cut off supplies of rare earth minerals and elements to Japan after a territorial dispute, and prices skyrocketed globally. And the West didn't learn from this. They didn't do anything to diversify the supply of rare earths afterwards. Now it's payback time. Don't let one country have the monopoly or near monopoly on a particular thing that you need to survive. And it's as stupid as allowing countries that produce oil and gas to dictate our price of our energy bills. It's just as daffy. Stop doing this. If I'll give the Victorians some credit, and I do have to give the Victorians some credit, because I know we always think of it. We always think of Victorians, and we think of the scramble for Africa. We think of the fact that kids were climbing up fucking climbing up chimneys and being sent down mines. But it was actually the Victorians that stopped a lot of that. It was during the Victorian era that unions came in, and to give the Victorians a little bit of credit, they did have a long-term goal. They did have long-term goals. They were not just thinking for the next 3 years or 5 years or even 10 years. They were thinking 100 years in the future. They were thinking thousands of years in the future. What will society look like? What will the world look like? A really good example of this, I think, is Joseph Bazalgette's sewers in London, where they built them in 90% redundancy. Unlike in Houston, Texas, which keeps flooding all the time because the sewers were built just for the number of people who lived in Houston, Texas in the 1950s or whatever it was, not thinking, oh, maybe it'll get bigger in the future. Duh. The Victorian engineers of their day knew that in the future London will get bigger. And they went, okay, well, since 1800 to 1850, it's grown by this amount. So we can extrapolate that going forward. It will grow by even more. So I'll put a 90% redundancy in these sewers so they're fucking massive. So they can fit all of the shit, wee and poo that people are blasting out of themselves on a daily basis. I don't know why I went over there, but just having that idea of thinking into the future, I really respect it. I really do, because I don't think there's anyone who's thinking about the long-term trends on this planet who is like, oh yeah, let's keep heating it up. Let's keep burning that carbonaceous slime from the other side of the planet. Let's just burn that bastard. Let's burn that coal. Let's burn that gas. Hey, let's just burn it. Burn it all. Some people just want to watch the world burn. They really, really do. Trump's tariffs are just shooting yourself in the foot. Really, that's what it is. It's China's rare earth policy is it's quite surgical, because it's putting the pressure. It's putting the pressure on countries, not just America, but all over the world, to dance to China's tune. And we've put ourselves in this position by not looking to the future and what are we going to need in the future, And I'm sorry, but there's no excuse. There's no excuse. We've known about climate change since the late 70s, actually, but it wasn't really announced by NASA until the early 80s because the oil companies kept it under their hat. Bastards. But we've known about the growth of the internet, and since 1997, 95 actually, when people started getting their first email addresses. And then smartphones have been around for nearly 20 years now. It's not like we didn't know that this was going to happen. It's not like we didn't know that in the future we'll need rare earth materials, but we chose not to do anything about it. Rare earth elements. Di, thank you so much for the £20 super chat. That's very kind of you. Useful technology ended when Leo Fender invented the Telecaster. Take it from me, I'm a steely-eyed missile man. Got an electric guitar enthusiast there in the chat. Cheers, Di. Thanks very much for the £20 super chat. That's very kind of you. But yeah, all technology is bunk. Global markets dip. So there's NASDAQ and the fucking Dow and whatever. They all dipped at the moment. Trump made his 100% threat on Friday. Semiconductor and EV companies tumbled. Investors spooked by the prospect of another full-blown trade war. The wider consequences of this is supply chain disruptions across Asia and Europe and inflationary ripple effects, higher costs for electronics, for cars, for defense, for green tech, and political fallout in allied countries, particularly in Japan, South Korea, and the EU. And then we've got the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, who have been warning to expect slower growth, higher prices, and increasing economic nationalism if the spiral continues. And, Trump, there's the irony, Trump promised to bring manufacturing back to America. This was a big thing, wasn't it? Instead, he's making everything more expensive for Americans while pushing China to become more self-reliant. Yeah. So, this again, it's he's got to be in the news every 5 seconds. We talked about this on Friday, didn't we? How fast the murder of Charlie Kirk sort of got pushed off the news agenda, like no one's talking about it anymore. And that's Trump's fault because Trump has to have new news every day. I mean, he is in hock to the people who make loads of money by controlling the means of communication, like Rupert Murdoch. And Murdoch fucking loves him, just like the guy played by Jonathan Pierce in Tomorrow Never Dies, that terrible Bond film, but it has a Murdoch-like character in it who wants to cause a war between China and the rest of the world, because it'll sell loads of newspapers. That's exactly what Murdoch wants. He just wants chaos all the time because chaos is a ladder. No, it's chaos is a means to sell his shit, his bullshit. So you've got, first of all, the sort of weapon of mass distraction of Trump is, sinking under these legal scandals and, the populism because these tariffs play well with his America First base. You don't understand the first thing about economics or anything really. And also it allows him to do his projection things of blaming foreign nations for his own economic failures. And this Xi-Trump meeting that was supposed to take place is now probably not going to happen. And this Trump, he's apparently just sabotaged it to appear tough on China, tough on the causes of China, And US-China cooperation on things like the climate and AI and North Korea could end up collapsing, and countries like India, Vietnam, and Indonesia may benefit in the short term, but global instability will hurt us all in the long term, and the EU will face a ripple effect through supply chains, and so will we in the United Kingdom. The UK exporters reliant on Chinese components will be hit. And Trump thinks tariffs are weapons, but in reality, the hand grenades with the pin taken out, and you're just holding it in your hand, looking at it. Wonder what this does. He just doesn't get it. He doesn't get that this is not the way to put pressure on countries because he doesn't understand diplomacy. He just wades in like the fucking, the Kool-Aid guy. Either the actual Kool-Aid jug of Kool-Aid comes crashing through the wall, or the Reverend Jim Jones, both of whom are Kool-Aid guys. So he's a sort of mashup of the two, isn't he? The Kool-Aid president, crashing through the wall, telling everyone to drink the poison Kool-Aid. He's we've talked about this a million times, but anyone who's very familiar, I guess, with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the teacher's talking about the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, which caused the Great Depression in America, triggered a global fucking downturn in the economy, arguably caused the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany. You know how well that all ended up, didn't you? And then you've got the 1980s, the Japan panic, when US accused Japan of unfair trade that led to a voluntary export restraint and tech stagnation. And decades later, Trump and the US are repeating the same mistakes with China. Protectionism doesn't protect, it isolates, it inflates prices, and it ignites resentment. And I keep saying this, austerity doesn't work. Protectionism is kind of a form of austerity because it's talking about not spending money on stuff, right? Austerity says don't spend money on stuff. So people save, people keep money to themselves. They stuff it into the mattress, they hide it behind the carriage clock on the mantelpiece. And unless money's moving around, You need money to move in order to make money. You just do. Money stuffed in your mattress isn't going to make any extra money. It's just going to remain stuffed in your mattress until you decide to pay for something. And then if you've faced inflation, if you've stuffed £100 in your mattress and then you take it out, 20 years later, it's not going to be able to buy you as much stuff as it could have done had you maybe, I don't know, invested it or something, done something with it, bought something that's now worth a lot more, like, I don't know, a house. You can't buy a house for £100, but Trump has turned the world's most complex trade relationship into a schoolyard fight. And but while he tweets insults to the Chinese, China is quietly tightening the screws on the global economy. Well done, dickhead. Yeah, and the rare earth story, the rare earth's story isn't just about minerals, elements. It's about dependence and arrogance and the illusion of control. And the US has built a system that relied on China for cheap labor, cheap components, cheap pollution. And now that bill is come due. So, Trump thinks he's playing fucking poker with China, but, they're playing chess. They're even playing the same fucking game. He's fucking mated. Paula, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. Trump doesn't understand who pays tariffs. Yeah, I know. He doesn't understand anything. He's a fucking dickhead. What can you do? But yeah, I just think that this is kind of crazy. BBC pauses. This is from Chris C. BBC pauses staff training workshops on transgender and LGBTQ plus issues following Supreme Court ruling. That's fucking disgraceful. That is that Supreme Court ruling is absolutely abominable. And it will be overturned by the ECHR, but by then it's going to be used as a cudgel, to whack anyone who wants to stay in the ECHR. Like most sensible people and Winston Churchill. It's gonna be a thing to whack them over the head with. Shocking news: Badenoch's approval rating has surged upwards following her announcements on scrapping stamp duty. That's from Chrissy. Well, good. Keep her in power. Keep him in place. Powerless. But yeah, isn't that interesting? Stamp duty, all these people who will never have to pay it are getting dead excited about it. Because the newspapers ran, and we saw the other day when we went through the newspapers, they were all going, oh my God, this is amazing. So you're going to get rid of stamp duty. This is the greatest idea of all time ever. And I'm sorry, but if your house is fucking, you bought it for £2.50 in 1973 and now it's worth £500,000, fuck off. Pay, and you want to downgrade. Oh my God, I've got to pay stamp duty. Yeah, you do. Give something back to your community, for fuck's sake. GHK, impeach Trump, anyone. Thanks very much for the super chat, mate. That's very kind of you. But GHK, I don't think that they should impeach him because it'll do fucking nothing. What you want to do, arrest the motherfucker, make him dig a hole, push him in the hole, leave him in the hole. That's it. Sorry, but they've impeached him twice. It gets nowhere because the impeachment process is voted on by the House of Representatives. They need a standard majority. So which other party is in at the time in the House of Representatives, they can impeach. They can impeach fucking anyone. They impeached Bill Clinton. They impeached Trump. But then it goes to the Senate. Right, and then the Senate has to convict, and then in order for the Senate to convict, it needs a supermajority. I think it's 60, it might be 66 of the 100 senators. It's never going to happen. The fact that they went through the political route instead of just going for the criminal route for Donald Trump after he mounted an insurrection against the American Parliament building, the Congress, the Capitol building. The fact that they didn't go after him criminally for stealing those documents and then selling them to the highest bidder. The fact that they didn't go after him criminally ringing up the governor of what's the name of the place, Georgia, and demanding 11,078 more votes or whatever the fuck it was. The fact they didn't go after criminally from the start and then faffed around doing these investigative committees, fucking idiots. No, they shouldn't have done that. Should have just gone straight for the crimes and said this guy's committed these crimes, and left it to the DOJ at the time to fucking pin him down, instead of the Trump appointed judges like that Eileen Cannon piece of shit who's put there by Trump, who just basically treaded water for years in the case to make sure that it didn't actually go to court. And then by the time it was officially supposed to go to court, she wasted so much time. He was suddenly president again, and he could basically pardon himself effectively. Kirsty, I used to support the BBC, but now I loathe it, says Kirsty. Well, this is the thing with the BBC. I mean, look, the BBC is a big old fucking corporation. It's one of our most successful exports around the world, and it does a lot of good. I know it's going to be a bit of a shit thing for you to hear right now, because obviously it's going down this route of platforming these fucking gobshites. I just find it fascinating that in the years that leading up to the Brexit vote, it had Euro hostile MEPs on every fucking week, had them on dozens of times, and not once did they have someone who was an MEP who was positive about the EU. Not once. Farage has been on that show 40 fucking times, or 39 times, and you know the Greens hardly get a look in. Zach Polanski was on Thursday. He probably won't be asked back on for a very, very long time. I don't doubt it. But if Farage wants to go on fucking Question Time, they'll just fall apart. Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Whatever. And that's really fucking upsetting and annoying and shit. It really is. And the stupid fucking BBC bias that they have is it where they say, oh, we've got to have an equal right to reply for everything that someone says. So whenever they have someone who's talking about what climate change is going to do to us, they have to have someone on who doesn't believe in climate change. This fake balance that they like to put out. But I'll say about the BBC, what I'll say about Labour. I don't think that it's in our interest to destroy these things, to destroy the party or destroy the institution or destroy the corporation. I think it's in our interest to change those things for the better, because they already exist. You're not going to get rid of them. And where the BBC is failing, we need to be pointing that out all the time and saying they are fucking up. And the mad thing is, the BBC spends all its time sucking the arse of these right-wing motherfuckers who, given the infinite power, unlimited power, they would absolutely get rid of the BBC. They hate the BBC because there's no money to be made. There's no, they want to make money. They just want to make money. That's all they care about, making money, you know? And they can't see something making money. It upsets and confuses them. That's why they hate the NHS. That's why they hate the BBC. And that's why they love the monopolies of these so-called, capitalist monopolies that they get set up, like the one we've got for water. We can only get water from one fucking company, depending on where we're living in the country, and we have no choice in the matter. And they want to put the prices up. There's fuck all we can do about it. And they're in bed with the, Ofwat or Ofgem or Ofsted or off fuck off bastards. Off you jolly well fuck. Yeah. So yeah, that's my take on it, Kirsty, and I hope you don't I hope that doesn't piss you off too much, but I do think the BBC does some good, and where it is failing, and don't get me wrong, it's fucking failing in some respects, especially with news and politics coverage. I'd like an opportunity to sort of someone who's not from the posh elite, the private school elite, to be able to get into the BBC and change things up a little bit. But don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon. So yeah, I'm going to go over to the papers now, if you don't mind, just for a moment, and then I'm going to wrap up soon because I've been rabbiting on for 49 minutes. We're just going to another 10 minutes of this, and then I'll piss off. If there's anything that you really want me to talk about, feel free to throw something into the chat. If I don't notice it, maybe just throw in a quid for a stupid chat, so I have to read it out. But if you do want me to send me off in a different direction, you're very welcome to do so. Get Britain reading, which is always a good idea, but they've got the horrible little transphobe over here, J.K. X.Y. Rowling. I don't really want to be reading her. But there you go. It's got Graham Norton as well. I don't know how he managed to get on the list. Is he a writer now? I don't know. He went to private school. So did Sam Al-Rushdie. Anyway, moving on. White House anger over UK spy case fiasco. God, they're trying to make a mountain out of this molehill, aren't they? Like, whatever. I mean, let's face it. Oh, I've got a welcome thing. You are awesome. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, the Conservatives, when they were in power, were working for the Russians. The Russians were giving huge donations via, third parties to the Conservative Party. But this doesn't get mentioned, does it? Diane Keaton has popped their clogs at the age of 79. The Oscar-winning star of Annie Hall. There she is. And the Godfather movies and Something's Gotta Give. And also we've got King tells Harry end the security row. The Duke of Sussex renewal of his battle with the government over personal security, risks evading his reconciliation with the king. Whatevs. And then we've got Newman's view. I abhor Trump and yet holding up the guards of peace thing. Someone tying themselves in knots, you see, because we're trying to turn ourselves in knots over Trump claiming victory in the Middle East. But the reality is this is built on the backs of a lot of people who've done a lot of diplomacy, and I don't think it would have been any different sort of outcome around the same time had Kamala won the election last year. Worse universities face fee cuts. Universities with a record of poor teaching will be forced to charge lower tuition fees under government plans. That'll be interesting. Then we've got Kate Winslet tells us how to look fabulous at 50, and the answer is be Kate Winslet. Simple. And then What Your Car Says About You by Sophia Money Coots. There you go. So what does Sophia Money Coots say about her? Well, her literal name is Money Coots. Money and then Coots as in Coots Bank, because her family are the people who founded the Coots Bank empire that Nigel Farage spat his dummy out the pram a couple of years ago because he couldn't get an account with them because he wasn't quite rich enough. He wasn't quite the multimillionaire he thought that he was. And then here we go. Here's the headline that we were all waiting for. Reeves will tax rich to fill black hole. Good. Fucking do it. Fucking do it. Do it. And then we've got the nearly home and people waiting for the hostages to be released, which hopefully might happen tomorrow. Russia may have been behind Jaguar Land Rover hack. Intelligence on China embassy threat left out of official reviews. Still banging on about this. And then minister orders crackdown on hate preachers. Hate preachers will be barred from leadership roles at mosques and Islamic centres under new anti-Semitism crackdown, which is going to be unveiled by ministers. And then the funny Matt cartoon, ha ha ha, people coming on a dinghy here saying, we're politicians fleeing France to avoid being made prime minister. They've got through a lot of prime ministers in the last few weeks, years, whatever. And then we've got the story on the Mirror there about the lead singer of the Lost Prophets, Ian Watkins, who has been killed in prison. Oh dear, how sad. Never mind. For sake of kids and OAPs, fight Farage. Gordon Brown is urging voters to stop reform. Yes, ex-PM slams reforms public service. Sorry, you can't see that. Service cuts plan. Because that's what they want to do. They want to just destroy everything. The Daily Star there with Vicky P's secret strictly sex ban with a woman sitting there in a bikini for some reason. And a really grim picture there of the grim man who got grimly killed in the grim jail somewhere. Femi does a really good TikTok about this, about how we, still somebody died, and they might have been one of the world's most notorious paedophiles, but I mean, he had a family. Obviously making, parallels with the death of Charlie Kirk. Worth watching that video if you follow Femi on TikTok. He put it up yesterday. Reeves eyes 7 billion pensions tax raid. There you go. A fresh blow for working people while bills soar. Pensions tax. Chancellor Reeves is eyeing up a £7 billion tax raid on pensions in a desperate bid to plug a black hole. Experts wondered she could push up taxes on both pension contributions paid by working people, and on withdrawals by retirees. So how a fresh blow for working people, but you just mentioned that actually it's going to probably affect retirees more who aren't working. Yeah. Anyway, the Observer here, observing, as the Observer sometimes does, the burden of hope as people returning to the north of Gaza, to their homes in Gaza City. And then we've got the Daily Mail over here. Oh, God. The Mail on Sunday. It's Sunday, don't forget. Even at the altar, I knew that marrying Cheryl was a huge mistake, by Paul Gascoigne. Fuck off, Gaza. You know what I mean? You stood there. You still stood there in front of all your family and friends and the inventor of the universe, apparently, and said that, you're not going to shag anyone else for the rest of your life. Just saying. How do you know? Anyway, world exclusive here. Day after we published infamous picture of Duke and his accuser that he wants us to believe is fake, and long after he claims to have cut ties with convicted paedophile, a very revealing email. Andrew to Epstein, we are in this together. Wow. That was the day after the Mail published this picture for the first time. With him and Virginia Giuffre. Oh my God. Just what a horrific man. And finally, we'll end with the Independent also reporting on Ian Watkins, who isn't H from Steps. So I want to just make that very clear. Although H from Steps' real name is Ian Watkins, you got the wrong Ian Watkins, mate. Now, my friend Kay and the gang, I can't say his name because I get demonetized. He did a song about 10 years ago, 12 years ago now, when Ian Watkins was first put on trial for these horrific crimes he committed. He did a song called "You Got the Wrong Ian Watkins, Mate," because everyone thought that it might be H from Steps when it wasn't H from Steps. It just happens to share the same name. Ironically enough, I was on TikTok yesterday and a video came up by Kay and the gang, and there he is, Basildon's finest, and he says Ian Watkins has just been killed in jail. He's just been murdered in jail, and he said this is a tragedy, and he's sending love to the rest of Steps, because they did a cover of Tragedy by the Beatles, didn't they? Anyway, so it was a bit of a, obviously, dark joke, dark humour, dark, unsettling humour, kind of I like. But that's how I found out that this has happened. And then I went on the BBC website, nothing about it. Went on the Sky News website, nothing about it. Nothing about it. And it wasn't until about 5 minutes after I saw the video that they actually hit the news. So I was like, oh, well done. Well done, Kay and the gang. You managed to get that video out and on TikTok. I must have been the first person to see it. About the fact that, making a joke about the fact that he shares a name with H from Steps. Okay. Back over here, hostages countdown, bring them home now. Thousands join huge rally as families urge final return of hostages. And I really hope they come back. The living hostages, they reckon there's about 20 living hostages left. And I hope they come back to their loved ones. And I think that anyone who doesn't hope that is a fucking monster, to be honest with you. Alistair, so apologies, the chat got stopped there. Couldn't comment or see it for a minute there, Graham. Ooh, don't know what was happening there, mate. Sorry. Did send a DM about the chat going down, irrelevant now. Thought YouTube did it to just me. No, it seems to have done to everybody. Sorry about that. The rich owe the country for their success. They owe it to everyone. Their taxes should help fund the environment for future successors. Yes, we should be planting trees whose shade we will not live to sit in the shade of, whatever. We should absolutely do that. No one guilty pays, just saying. Well, I think Ian Watkins was coming up for parole soon. So, yeah. No great loss. I'll say that. Like I say, I don't wish death on anyone, but some obituaries I read with great delight. To paraphrase Mark Twain. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Blathered on now for an hour. I'm sorry that we were late getting started. I kind of forgot how much we did go on a bit when we recorded the Sunday roast on Thursday. So who was complaining in the chat? Who was complaining in this chat about us not censoring everything that happened in the last 3 days? I'm like, no, we recorded it on Thursday. My crystal balls on that fucking shiny. But yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know. I'll have a chat with Alex, but I honestly think that because he has to try and put it together around other people's schedules, so I get that. But at the same time, I do think it might be an idea if we actually just record it on the Saturday, maybe on the Saturday night or something or Saturday evening. Before we do the show, before it gets broadcast in the morning, because otherwise, for a topical news thing, it is a little bit out of date. So if you're watching, Alex, no diss, man. I know it's difficult trying to get people on the show. I gave up. I fucking just gave up trying to get people to come on this channel. It was just not that people didn't want to come on, or not that they weren't fucking brilliant. It's just the logistics behind it, especially if you've got more than one guest. Oh my god. At least that's why I just do the Friday night social, because everyone in my little gang knows that 9:30 we'll do the Friday night social. So there you go. Hi, Veg Pie. How's is chat still going? It went quiet. I think it's back now. Get out in that sunshine, Graham. Yep, I absolutely intend to do that. If anyone's out in Durham town, come and say hello. I'll be out there. You'll be able to swap me with my stupid hat on. But until next time, I'm gonna read more of The Age of Extremes by Eric Hobsbawm, which was mentioned in the show that we did, and I was like, oh, I had to study that in university. So there you go. Left-wing historian Eric Hobsbawm. Right, I do like the Sunday roast. Is there now a show in the week related to it, or is it just entirely standalone? Well, Political X is on a different channel, so I think Sunday roast has its own channel. And then you've got Political X, which is Alex. He does videos on that. So, yeah, worth watching, absolutely. Scott was fantastic on Friday night. He was, wasn't he? That was really good. And, like, do you know what I loved about that show? The fact it was an hour and 20 minutes before we started talking about politics. And everyone in the chat just went with it. Do you know what I mean? When people go, fucking knobheads, talk about fucking politics. It was like, no, we're talking about our lives. We're talking about, the things that made us the people that we are, and, how we got to where we are. And I think that it's a lot more interesting than talking about a bunch of fucking uggos that we don't even know personally, who, create all this havoc around the world. And us just going, oh my God. And I like hearing about good news. I like hearing about simple acts of human kindness where people help each other and it's not all just dog eat dog. I hate that mentality. I hate the dog eat dog mentality. I hate the zero sum game that is played in the heads of all these right wingers who think that because someone else is doing well or someone else is happy, that we're somehow taking the happiness away from somebody else. Someone else's happiness makes me happy so long as what they're doing to make themselves happy isn't fucking sadistic. If they're helping out and that makes them feel good, great. And I think that just what I get out of it in my life is like, if I see people having a good time, it makes me have a good time. Whether that I'm at a gig or at Mardi Gras or at Gay Pride, or when people are dancing and singing and just having a laugh, it brings me up. It absolutely brings me up. And yeah, and some people might say that's selfish, Graham. How dare you? How dare you derive happiness from the happiness of others? Yeah, you happiness vulture, you happiness vampire. But no, I think most people are like that. I generally do. And most people are kind, and most people are big-hearted and just want to get on with their lives. It's just the minority who are just fucking knobheads, but unfortunately, the knobheads stick in your head. Yeah. There you go. Person, I like talking with older folk. They always have an interesting history, and buses are often late. Chat passes the time. Yeah. I find that as well. Chat passes the time. Like the number of buses and trains and shit that I've been on. Like, if I'm not talking to someone, I'm just sitting there, listening to music or scrolling on my phone or something. The time takes so long. But if I'm having a chat with someone, it's like, we're there. It's like you just, oh shit, we've arrived. Oh, cool. Let's go. But yeah, I do find that. Friday night social was epic. I'm glad, Diz. I'm glad you enjoyed it as well. So yeah, more of that, please. Scott and Aidan, Mike and everyone. So we'll be back. We'll be back on this Friday. Hopefully we'll try and get Super Tansky on this Friday, but we will see. We will see. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. Thanks for the super chats. Really appreciate that. And thanks for everyone being, kind and conscientious in the chat. And I will be back tomorrow. I might do something with Tan tonight on her channel, but we'll have to have a discussion about that. But don't bank on it. But if I'm not doing anything tonight, please watch Super Tansky's live stream that she normally does on a Sunday. And other than that, I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. bright and early with another morning brew. And until then, I will say thank you so much for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.